Turn that off.
Okay. Do you have a sense of humor, first of all? Let me ask you that. I see somebody smiling, that's it. What?
Peter, I was at the Academy screening last week of Robocop, and all of us seeing it was saying, well, this film seems more...
Yeah, was Ed Neumeier there?
That's right.
Yeah.
And everyone's saying it seems more prescient than ever.
It is.
How can you just elaborate on that and give your personal opinion?
Well, I'll give you three things, and it's thanks to Verhoeven and Ed and Mike. Look, I mean, they write this thing in, 1979, 1980. And if you think, yes, it's a great action movie. Yes, it's got great gimmicks in it and so forth, and it's ironic and funny and whatever. But if you look to the soul of it, it's truly about the commercial privatization. And the thing is, I ain't saying this is nothing about a capitalist, but even ancient Rome needed some regulation. But it is about the deregulation of capitalism and taking it over the essentially the core of a city. That's the story of Robocop. Are you guys on board with that?
Yes.
Yeah, and trickle down economics and everybody will be taken care of. No, first thing, you see cops going, no, man, we ain't gonna do that. So therein is one of the reasons why it lasts so long, because of them. The second thing is Verhoeven, who has a master's degree in medieval history and mythology, infuses it with images of resurrection and perpetuity, longevity, and salvation. And this is not just Judeo-Christian. This goes all the way back to Egypt, because the Pharisees get that idea from Egypt, that the soul will be resurrected. If you didn't have Verhoeven, I gotta just tell you this, you would have just a nice action movie. But Verhoeven's gifted, and Verhoeven drove that film. And the center of the film is essentially, look, the film's a tragedy, people. You know that, right? It's tragic. I mean, yes, the guy rediscovers himself, and yes, the guy, who are you, kid? I'm Murphy. But the center of it, the reason why Verhoeven did it, not the reason why I did it, I just did it because Verhoeven was doing it, and he was a hero to me. But Verhoeven says over and over and over again, the center of the movie, when he goes back, and the vestiges or the images or the spirit of his family is there, and he realizes it's gone, that horror is essentially what Ingmar Bergman said all of his movies were about. When Dick Cavett asked him in 1973, I'm 22 years old, I'm an actor studio dude. And Bergman, he says, and Dick Cavett asked Bergman, your movie, we all know who Ingmar Bergman is, I hope. Yes. If you haven't seen Persona lately, see it, please. It's one of the great feminist films ever, if not my favorite. But Bergman said, Cavett said something, in fact, I'm paraphrasing, are your films about, betrayal and sexual criminality and, love collision and all these amazing things. And Bergman goes, no, that's the plot. I make these movies, the plot is about romance and betrayal and identity and all this. But what all my movies are about is isolation. Because it's the worst single thing that a human being can suffer, is solitude and isolation, being left, being sequestered, being marginalized, when you're 22, you don't get that, right? I mean, I ain't that smart. I'm thinking, no, I like being alone. Ding, the bell goes off, and that's essentially what Verhoeven is telling me. He's sitting in a Dallas suite. This movie is truly about loss and isolation, loss of the most important thing that anybody on planet Earth, if they have some sanity, is family. Bing. Look, that's why that movie is great. Yeah, it's got some great stuff in it, but to me, when I did the last viewing of it, when Miguel Ferrer died, they asked me to go down to the ArcLight, and me and Ed Neumeier presented it. And I said, you want to watch it? I said, sure, okay. The last time I presented to J.J. Abrams and Bad Robot for his crew, but I never watched it. I sat there watching it with Ed. This is what 7 or 8 years ago. I thought, man, I can't watch this movie anymore. It's a brilliant, brilliant movie, but it absolutely sears me because I take myself out of it now. I'm not even watching it. I'm just watching this particular fantastic deconstruction of society, of money, of interests, of family. And that's why it's brilliant. How was that? By the way, I got a book coming out with Cambridge University Press. I'm going to plug it right now. It's about a very famous polymath from Florence named Leon Battista Alberti, architect, poet, painter, everything else. The Brits have said for years he went to Florence saw the Ninja Turtles, 9 months, wrote the very first book on painting. Yours truly, beefed and beefed and beefed. I said, man, this guy went to tons of places before he went to Florence. And 15 major art historians said, this is the thing about revisionist history. They said, yeah, you know what? Everybody knows that, but nobody teaches it. I said, why not? Because everybody wants to teach Florence. How many of you heard this, that Florence is the center of the Renaissance and all things ninja? Right, come on. You heard this, right? Michelangelo, Raphael, Leonardo, right? You've heard this all. Haven't you heard this? Yeah, I have to live in Florence once. So my book is about not that. And it'll walk you through the Renaissance. It's called Leon Battista Alberti in Exile. Don't run away. Get it on Amazon. It's on Amazon, man. Pre-order it now. Okay. And it's Cambridge University Press, people. You thought you had another orange juice head from Malibu in here talking to you? No. Cambridge doesn't print books unless you're a smarty pants, and I'm kind of a wannabe smarty pants. Yeah.
I know you're a big fan of the Beat Generation and William Burroughs. How big of a fan were you before Naked Lunch? Were you as big of a fan before Naked Lunch, or did the experience of Naked Lunch make you explore that more?
That's one of, as far as my life goes, that's one of the most profound questions ever asked me. Because my mother's a jazz musician. Her mother was a jazz musician teacher, like a ragtime teacher. So I grew up playing the trumpet. My heroes are all jazz people, right? But I was not getting that thing out of jazz, especially when jazz goes into bebop. This is your music history. After World War II, you know, Disney and Charlie Parker and all that essentially are inventing stuff that's not being heard before. And subsequently out of that, not out of the jazz, but the same movement is producing poetry that people have not heard before. Because before that, you got lyric poetry or metaphysical poetry of Eliot, you know, or the existential poetry of Wallace Stevens, right? But then all of a sudden it shifts, man, in the communist, anti-communist era, into this free-form, stylistically symbolic poetry of all those cats. And I didn't get into that until I got into college. So I had to read it. And you know, my mother was always saying, read this stuff. I said, no, I like these lyric guys, man. So finally in college, you know, I grew up in the age of revolution. I grew up in the age of, growing up in college, of feminism, of queer theory, of Vietnam, of black rights, of riots. And so somebody hands me a book on beats, and I go, man, these guys were like kicking it. And that's when I turned on to it. I was a Johnny-come-lately to it. I'd like to say I was hip to it, but so I searched about that. Just for your note, I'm promoting Robocop 2 in Cannes. There are pictures everywhere. 20th Century Fox, Naked Lunch. 20th Century Fox, Naked Lunch. Okay, I read Naked Lunch in 1968. I wrote Cronenberg a letter, almost begging him to play Bill Lee, because that was my Bible, that book. And he called me up and said, let's meet in New York. And we talked about Ferraris all day long, and then next thing happened. But I pursued it, man. That's my jam. That period of time, that shift after World War II, that postmodern era where all sorts of sensibilities are changing. Family values. Really? You could beat your wife or your kid in public? I mean, that's what I grew up in. Blacks couldn't drink out of the same water fountain? That's why my mother said, don't call anybody boss and don't let anybody call you boss. Because that's a racist prison term, suppression. Thank God I had a great mother. By the way, I'm just going to leave you with this. As the Neapolitans say, c'è la vita durante la mamma e dopo la mamma. You know what that means? What?
Something about your mom.
It means no matter what you think of your dad, no matter how good you get along with your parents or not, there is your life during your mother's life. And there's life after her life. And it says Allora, which means this, and that's the way it's supposed to be. Because the last thing a mother ever wants to see is one of her kids dying before her. Got it? Okay, I'm gonna leave you with that. That's what you're doing on the piece. So just remember that. Call up mom. Say thanks.